These days, tech is pretty much everywhere, and if you're someone like me who likes adding tech to your home or adding tech to your life, well, this is nice. But because it's so ubiquitous these days, and pretty much every company has some version of a smart product, well, that definitely means there are tiers to that quality. And I think there's no doubt that if you are in the home space and you're looking for smart home products, Lutron is the #1 place to go. I've used them for their light switches and dimmers for years now, and I've always wanted to explore what it looked like to take Lutron to that next level. And part of doing that is with adding something like this, the Caséta Smart Shades. These are their new smart shades that they announced back at the beginning of the year, and it takes what they do with some of their higher end products, but brings it to a much more affordable price. We're talking like half the price of some of the other options. Now, if you've been in the smart home world, there's a few different categories of product. At least there are when I think about which ones to get. There are the lower tier, I guess you'd say, which is like the device that kind of always needs to be used in a smart way. So, if it's a light bulb, for instance, I'd have to use the app or I'd have to use my voice. And if I go flip a switch, it completely breaks the experience. Then there's the second tier, which is products that you just wouldn't expect to be smart, but actually help a lot, like, I don't know, a garage door opener or certain appliances that work really well and just enhance your life. But then there is the third category, which is my favorite, and I think is where Lutron really fits in here. It's those products that have the smart capability, but if you didn't care about that, if you didn't want to think about it, it's going to work incredibly reliably as if it has no smarts at all. And if you didn't want to use any of the smarts, you can still use it as well. And that is exactly what Lutron does. And so for me, when I'm looking at outfitting my home, Lutron is the top of the list. And if they don't have a solution for it, then I'll look elsewhere. But that's where I start. And so I have a few different light switches around the house. I even have this Pico remote, which I use to control my Sonos system. And everything works as expected. And for someone like my wife, who doesn't care about smart products, she just hits the button like anyone else. And for me, well, that's when I can play with schedules and play with smart features. It works great. And one thing my house didn't have when I moved in was window treatments. And I don't know if you've looked around at window treatments before, but they can get very expensive, especially if you have an entire house to outfit. And the most affordable tier at the time was their Serena shades. These are smart shades that you can get in a bunch of different patterns. You can attach them to different types of windows, and you now get a smart shade that will close automatically. You can set it to a schedule, all the things you would hope from a smart shade. The problem is, they were very expensive. Expensive enough that it was not worth me doing. And so I went a different route. But now Lutron has these, the Caséta shades. And they basically took the Serena that they already had and just pared it down a little bit so that it is now half the price. They start around $400 and then they adjust depending on size. And so Lutron reached out, asked to send them over, and now I've been living with them for months. And I think this is the best way to sum up my experience with them. That honestly, I've kind of forgot that they exist because they do exactly what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do them. And I've never once had an issue so far. I absolutely love these things. And for the price, this is definitely where I'd start looking if you're in the market. Now, like I said, Lutron is not new to this space, and I think that's a big benefit because you get some of the expertise that they've gained from the higher end markets. The Serena shades are definitely higher end and give you more options, but they go beyond that. Lutron makes different levels and tiers of this type of product. And so they can kind of trickle down what you need and, bring that price down as well. And that's exactly what they've done here. Now, there's really, I think, 3 things to consider with smart shades like this from really any brand. And it's 1, how easy is it to order? Second, how easy is it to install? And then actually using them, what is the day-to-day like? Do they work? Do you have any issues with them? Those 3 things kind of answer everything. The ordering process here is super simple. You go onto the Lutron website, which I'll leave that link down below if you want to go check it out. But basically you get the measurements for each of your windows. You can decide what type of mounting you want. So for my case, I went inside of the window, so they're flush with the wall. But if you have trim or a different type of window where you need it to be outside of the window frame, you could do that as well. And then you just measure based on what type of treatment you're getting. And they have different videos here giving you a tutorial of how to kind of get the best average and figure out which measurement is the correct one to order by. They also allow you to name each order. So if you're ordering multiple shades for different windows, you can keep them in track, and it also makes it a lot easier to install. And one area where you can definitely see the cost cutting measure is in the options. You really don't have that many options. With these, you really only get 4 options. You could choose the type of shade, so a roller or a honeycomb. You can choose if you want it to be a complete blackout or if you want it to light filter through. Then you can choose between gray and white. So those are the color options you have. And then then you can choose the mounting type that you want, like I mentioned before. But that is kind of it. Those are the options you have. So as long as you're okay with all of those, well, then you're ready to go. Now through this ordering process is also where you can order like your Pico remotes or any accessories that you might want. I definitely recommend doing it here just because these Pico remotes are, unique to the Shade. So they actually have the Shade graphics on it, which, I think is helpful, but I'll talk about the Pico remote in a second. But basically this is where you order everything. Super simple. For the 3 windows I got, which is for the bedroom here, that was around $1,500 for everything. So again, these are not cheap products, but they are certainly more affordable. For reference, for the same room with the Serena shades, which we were looking at as well, that was around double the price. And so, it's a big savings there. Now, once you get them in, it's time to install them. This can be a little bit tricky just depending on your situation because there's so many varieties of windows and types of windows. You might need to think on your feet a little bit. And there's not really the best instructions when it comes to installing these. I kind of had to figure it out on my own, but it's pretty simple. You just kind of clip these 2 sides together, screw them in, and that was it. But where it comes in is, like I said, because there's so many different types of mounting areas and different types of windows, I ended up needing to bring some of my own hardware because the ones that they included didn't quite work for where I was intending to install them. I wouldn't necessarily blame Lutron for this because they do include everything needed to mount. It's just in my particular window, it just was a little funky, so I needed to adjust a little bit, but the installation was super simple. And once it's physically mounted, then you have to install the batteries. It takes D-cell batteries, but here's the thing. You don't really have to change them very often at all. I've only been living with these for a few months and there's been no issues there, but I know other people that have like the Serena shades, which uses a similar system, and they have gone, like a year plus without needing to change the batteries at all. And since they're D-cell, they're pretty cheap. I got a big pack on Amazon for like 10 bucks. And once you install them, the shades boot up and now you can pair them to your Lutron app. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that in order for these to work, you will need the Lutron hub. Like I said, I already have Lutron products, so I was just able to use the one I already have, but that will be an added cost if it's something you don't already own. But that's how this all works. So it's using the same protocol that you're used to from like the light switches, and it works seamlessly with that. Now, with all that being said, the most important thing is what is it actually like to live with, and great is the easiest way to say it. They work exactly as I hoped. There's a few things though that I was not expecting that really left me pleasantly surprised and really made it so that when I do the rest of the house with all my window treatments, I'm not even questioning it. This is what I'm going to be buying. The first thing that really pleasantly surprised me is how quiet they are. Because I put these in the bedroom, I wanted them to, black out the light because one of our bedroom windows faces east. And so in the morning we get blasted with sun, which, is nice. But if I'm trying to sleep in or if my schedule changes and I just don't want to be woken up super early when the sun rises, well, it's kind of hard to do because you're just getting blasted in the face with sun. And so having a blackout shade is great. And so what I do is I have them scheduled to raise at a certain time every day so that if I don't wake up, I want to be blasted with the light, so I wake up, right? But the thing I was kind of worried about was them being too loud. And so that if they did automatically operate, that I would be, jolted awake. Or if my wife opened the shades or something like that, how loud would they be? Because with my experience with other shades from other third-party companies, they are pretty loud and obnoxious. These ones though are relatively silent. I mean, just you can hear it here. So yeah, I've never had an issue with the sound, and that was very, very pleasant. The other thing that's nice, and this is kind of a claim to fame for Lutron, is that they close all together. This is not really a huge deal to me personally, but it does add a nice aesthetic look. So when you hit the button to close them or you use a voice command to close them, they all start closing at the same time at the same rate. So they kind of all come down. Now, of course, my one window is shorter than the other, so they do end at different times, but they are all traveling at the same rate and they all start at the same time. That is not something you can say for many other brands out there. Now, the other thing I've really enjoyed is the Pico remote because it makes controlling these super easy. If you've ever used a Pico remote, it's basically just a remote controller that you can wirelessly use. So it's not physically attached if you don't want it to be. And that's kind of how I have it here. I have it on my nightstand so I can activate the shades whenever I want, but you can, like I said, downstairs I have a Sonos control with the Pico remote, so I can actually have that mounted. So, when I walk in the room, I can just hit play or, adjust the volume. You could do that same type of thing with the Pico remote for the shades. And And with this too, I've also set different presets. So for instance, in the spring, when we have the windows open because the weather's really nice and we want to, you know, not run AC or run heat or anything, I'm able to preset here on the Pico remote that when I click it, just one shade opens up so that I can open the window and let fresh air in, but I can still keep the other windows closed so I have the most light filtering possible. And yeah, I mean, like I said, overall, I kind of have forgotten about these shades because they just work perfectly. There's never been one time where they've operated when they weren't supposed to or not operated when I wanted them to. And so for me, yeah, these are probably one of my favorite smart home products ever. I love them, and I'll be putting them in the rest of my house for sure as we, you know, renovate different rooms. But yeah, like I said, I'll leave links down below, so if you want to price this out, see if it's a good option for you, you can check it out. But I love these things, and I'm glad I have them.